Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
It's another day.
Yes, please. So,
Hope all is well.
yes, that's life.
Wow, okay. The ball is in your court now.
Thank you very much for the reception. I want to extend my greeting to all our students and our cherished viewers and listeners as well. Today, we are having radio lecture, and the course code is EDC 351, course title, Introduction to Guidance and Counseling in Education. And today, we are looking at historical development of guidance and counseling. And we want to begin by saying that in terms of how guidance and counseling evolved, it started with the Asian or early Greek communities as well as the Romans in the 20th century. They were with the ideas of philosophical teachings of Aristotle and Plato. Then they expanded upon these ideas and saw that the individual, as interacting with the environment, you could develop some skills that will help you to be able to function very well as a resource person in the community you find yourself. The Greeks' aim was to train their young ones or the upcoming youth to be able to acquire knowledge and skills to develop themselves and become more useful in the society. They believe that human beings as we are, we were all gifted differently, and based on your uniqueness, you could be guided in a particular order or way, so that will really be based on your strengths, based on your interests, and based on your capabilities and abilities. And based on that, you were suited for different types of work. It will be said that among the ancient Romans, the parents serve as parental models, where children learn from their parents. If you look at Albert Bandura's social learning theory, where it says that we learn by doing, we learn by observing. So children in those days also learn from their parents by learning how to do what their parents were doing in terms of trade, in terms of crafts. So if they did all these things, then parents were serving as parental models where the children learn from them. The parents provided encouragement and motivation, and they led by example. The Greeks also guided their young ones to know that they were suited for some particular traits or occupation, and as such, that is where their interests and abilities could first fit them. There's an argument that some of the skills and techniques used in modern day counseling can be traced with the dedication to the concept of confidentiality rooted in the Catholic Church, where the priests are seen to be listening to the sins of their congregants, which we call confessoria. So in confession of sins, the priest listens to you and then he doesn't tell anybody your issue. That's where confidentiality is actually ingrained from. So listening to your issue means that it is between you and then the priest, and the priest will make everything possible to console your issue or your problem, and no third party will listen. That is where confidentiality has been, and it has helped us in the modern day guidance and counseling, where we see counseling to be thriving so much based on confidentiality. Now I want to look at development of guidance and counseling in the Western world. Guidance in the United States started in the 1890s, that is in the 19th century. It commenced in industrial countries like New York, Boston, Detroit, and then Chicago. These industries, as we've seen, were established, and their areas were that they wanted to make some kind of maybe recruitment, and there was industrial boom. Industrial boom means that there was public announcement where these industrial countries that we have mentioned, Boston, Detroit, Chicago, and New York, announced that the industries were looking for people to employ. So when the public announcement was made, people for all walk of life rushed there. As they rushed there, it comprised both the skilled and non-skilled. The skilled are those who had the requisite skills to be employed, and the unskilled are those who did not have the skills but they also wanted to be employed. So as people moved from all over the world to these industrial countries, the industry could not provide opportunity for all these people to be employed, and people also didn't want to come back to their countries again. So there was overcrowding. There was a lot of unemployment because people were there and the jobs could not offer each of them employment. Now, what you could do is that there were low wages, because if more people were employed, it means that your salary will be divided and then given to other people. But the work you were supposed to do actually didn't actually mean that it was meant for ladies or women or children. But once they were all there, they were exploited, which means that they were working under conditions that were not favorable for them. And overcrowding and then housing became a problem. Facilities were overstretched because of the teeming numbers that rise there to get employment. When that happens, the crime rate was in the boom as people from different backgrounds came in with different motives. Now, these conditions led to the formation of humanitarian movements to criticize the injustice that was perpetrated to people. And they said, no, human beings should not be degraded this way, and they should be dignified people given the due respect. So they came together and they used guidance to be able to help train the young ones who were not having the requisite skills, so that once they get the requisite skills and they were skilled, the industry could now employ them and give them the best wages that they were actually supposed to get. In 1885, George Murray, a great philosopher, started formal guidance in San Francisco and established a school known as California School of Mechanical Art. He did exploratory work where he taught with trades about students, and students learned a lot of opportunities about occupation. George Murray also made them collect information on various opportunities, and this is what he actually taught students through counseling, so that they could know the best opportunities for them based on their uniqueness and their interests and abilities, and then what they were endowed with. So through counseling, he was able to lead people to be able to understand that they were best suited for some particular kinds of jobs and not all jobs. So when he did the training with the youth, they were deployed and most of them got employment. So he made a follow-up on them to see how they were faring in their respective work environment. So that's where follow-up service began. So when you avail yourself for counseling, and after the end of the resolving the issue and then the process is terminated, the counselor will have to make a follow-up on you up to some required number of years before he will not follow up on you again. So follow-up service is a service that each individual who avails for counseling is entitled to, where the counselor is supposed to check up on you to know how you are coping. There's another great philosopher we want to talk about, Frank Parsons. He was a social and political reformer. He was known to be the father of vocational guidance. And it was Frank Parsons who formed the Vocational Bureau in Boston due to his work with the Civic Service House to provide vocational assistance to young people. So in the 1908, the Boston Vocational Bureau helped outline a system of vocational guidance in Boston public basic schools. The work of the Bureau influenced the need for and the use for the vocational guidance both in the United States and other countries. By the 1918, there were documented accounts of the Bureau's influence as far as Uruguay and China is concerned. Remember, we are live on Radio Windy Bay 98.3. This is Radio Lecture Series, and today we are having discussion on EDC 351, Introduction to Guidance and Counseling in Education, and we are looking at historical development of guidance and counseling. So at the right time, you tune in and then begin to listen. At the right time, the phone lines will be activated, and you begin the opportunity to also contribute to your discussion or ask questions for clarification, so that you can get ideas clearly, and when you are examining examination, you'll be able to really produce the best results. So this is meant for level 300 students who are doing the course for this semester. So I've shared the flyers with the students that I'm teaching, and I believe by this time you are all listening at the right time. When the phone lines are activated, we will listen to your comments and then your questions, and together we will help you understand the concepts better. So we want to continue by knowing the fact that in guidance and counseling, we are saying that it is a profession where people want to know how things are done. So according to Frank Parsons in 1918, guidance and counseling in these early years was considered to be mostly vocational in nature. But as the profession advanced, other personal concerns became part of the school's counselor's agenda. In 1909, Frank Parsons published his book titled Choosing a Vocation. In his book, he is said to be the first person to coin the term vocational guidance. So because of that, we are going to accredit him with the title as the fan who has been noted as the father of vocational guidance. So when he published the book, this marked the beginning of vocational guidance. His efforts and subsequent publications brought about the profession, guidance, and counseling. Then organized guidance and counseling then emerged in the 1920s and 1930s. In Africa, I want to look at how guidance and counseling also started. Guidance and counseling can be traced to our traditional way of living, and aspects such as marriage, where if you want to get married, your parent had a hand in the kind of woman or how kind of man you are going to marry. Unlike these days where the men and the women choose their partners, in those days it wasn't so. Your parents had a ultimate choice. Whether they decide we are going to marry somebody, you have to listen to them and then obey. So in terms of the way our marriages were conducted in those days, in terms of the way our work actually experiences gave us, the morals that our society taught us to be, and how we were advised and guided through exhibited guidance and counseling, this all reflected the way guidance has been in the African context. Now, in countries such as Nigeria, Ghana, Tanzania, Zambia, Kenya, Egypt, Togo, Malawi, and Botswana, and some few other countries, those countries have not been mentioned here, and when you do further reading, you have to get the countries and add. Now, when we are talking about how guidance and counseling started in Africa, Nigeria is the first country that comes to mind. And we want to put on record that for Nigeria, it was in 1959 where Roman Catholic sisters organized career guidance for their final year students. So 1959, Nigeria is where those Roman Catholic sisters came from, and they organized career guidance for their final year students. This is how officially guidance and counseling started in Nigeria. We are looking at historical development of guidance and counseling in Ghana. Guidance and counseling in Ghana can be viewed from two broad perspectives. The first one is informal or indigenous or traditional guidance and counseling. The second one is formal or modern or organized guidance and counseling. In terms of the informal or the indigenous or traditional guidance and counseling in Ghana, this initial guidance and counseling in Ghana, which was in the form of advice and guidance, given was practiced among indigenous Ghanaians. So you can see that it's reflected in some of the teachings of our great-grandparents and our parents, something like poverty rise, something like advice giving, proverbs, folk tales, riddles, puzzles, then taboos, vocational education, marriage, parenting, and reinforcement. So in all these ones, you could realize that guidance and counseling was seen in it, where it helped the young ones to be able to live good moral lives. In those days, when our traditional values were enforced to the latter, if you actually forgot of your item and you happen to go and leave it, the next day you could come to the same place and pick that item. Nobody will pick it. But this time around, things are not that way. When you leave something, people will take it before you even get to your hall of residence or your place of living. And the same way, you may even be having valuable items you have not forgotten of it. People will come and rob you. So that is how far we have come, and this is not helping us. But in those days, because of the norms that guided them, they did things in a way that people respected cultural values and cultural norms, and that was a very good way of living. Now, in the Ghanaian context also, there was a time known as voluntary service era, where people did a lot of errands for others for free of charge. They did work in the home, they did work in churches and in schools, and all these ones, they were not paid for the services that they were rendering. The kinds of voluntary services provided by parents, the priests, and teachers were in the form of consulting and advising the youth on moral issues. They also assisted and advised the youth with their financial problems and then issues. They provided places and opportunity for the youth to socialize and then recreate. So it came to a time that you could see that youth camps were always organized, jamborees were organized, and then Easter conventions were organized. This is an opportunity for the youth to come together to socialize. And you can see that in terms of sporting activities or in terms of, let me say, athletics, you bring people together, and the young ones were the ones who were mostly targeted. They come together to socialize and to also share ideas, and it was a form of recreation and socialization for them. Now, the olden days too, the youth were assisted to solve their personal problems. Instead of dodging problems, you were told to be responsible for your own problems and should be able to find solutions to the problem that you encountered. Now, guiding the youth through Sunday school lessons and discussions to develop morality and spirituality. So there were Sunday school teachers who actually volunteered and taught people, young ones, to be able to know what was the doctrines or the tenets of their belief. So these people didn't get any pay, they did the work voluntarily. But this time around, we are not ready to do any voluntary work to anybody. Everything we must be paid. So you realize that in our churches, the Sunday school teachers, they are not many as they used to be. Choristers are not many. Every day announcement is made, but nobody is going to join. Ushers are not many, and nobody is willing to join. Everything you do, you think that people should pay you. But you should remember that people serve voluntarily, and it has come to your time and my time. We should also be ready to do something so that we are going to be noted for the kind of service we are rendering to whatever community we find ourselves. Now, there were objectives of the employment center that were established nationwide, because guidance is something that didn't take place once in a while. It was something that was a procedure. So to be able to see that it was effective, there were some employment centers that were established across the country, and they had some objectives that were to be accomplished. First of all, the objectives was to introduce occupational literature into schools through the Ministry of Education, to enable young people to read about jobs and perhaps know which ones are suitable for them. The second one was to develop lines of communication between various ministries and the employment service centers. Then the third objective was to provide officers with a theoretical base in counseling and supervise practical experiences. So the officers who were there were given some kind of maybe in-service training so they could update their knowledge on the theories that underpin counseling and guidance practice. The next objective was to improve contacts between the Ministry of Labor and the Ministry of Education, who although were responsible for making sure that the youth were gainfully employed. So the committees that were formed had these objectives to accomplish. Now I want to see former attempts that were made to organize guidance and counseling in a formal way in Ghana, and how the various institutions were taxed to make sure that guidance and counseling were operationally formalized here. In the year 1955, where the government attempted to organize a national system of vocational guidance, and this was done by establishing youth employment services for youth under the age of 20 years who had middle school leaving certificate. So they needed to actually get them something to do so that they could also earn a living. By 1961, there were 30 youth employment centers that were established across Ghana. In 1962, there was an establishment of National Vocational Guidance System to make education system reflect the economic development and the manpower needs of the country. In 1968-69 academic year, a unit for guidance and counseling was created in the Curriculum Research Development Unit of the Ghana Education Service, alongside those of special education and welfare. So you can see that every region, every municipality or metro or district has special education and welfare officers. It was actually a unit that was created where guidance and counseling was also part. In 1971, the cumulative record card was launched in elementary schools in some selected districts of 5 regions, namely Eastern Region, Volta Region, Western Region, Central Region, and Greater Accra Region. These cards were also introduced into learners of teacher training colleges, and they were taught how to use the cumulative record card. So we can all remember that in those days, cumulative record card was a card that valuable information about the students were kept. And if you were moving from one class to the other, or one school to the school, another school, it was a card that will follow you and give the details about you. In that card, we will know much about your history, your interests, and your family structure, in terms of your aptitude, your behavior, whether your behavior is good, satisfactory or not. Everything will be captured about you in the cumulative record card. So this was an important card that gave us valuable information about our students. In 1973, 3 Ghanaian experts trained in the United Kingdom, United States of America, and Canada arrived in the country to contribute to the guidance and counseling field. However, the political conditions in the country did not allow them to work effectively because a military coup d'etat had occurred in Ghana in 1972. In 1974, there was an adoption of a new structure and content of education in Ghana, where vocational, technical, and business subjects were added to our school curriculum. So people got opportunity to be able to read business, vocational, and technical courses based on what their interest was. In 1975, some teachers who were not below the rank of assistant superintendent were trained to serve as welfare officers in our elementary schools. So their mandate was to help the people who are the learners, teachers, and parents in resolving their problem. Want to see how formalized guidance and counseling programs in the second and first circle institutions in Ghana started? In 1976, the government issued a first directive for the establishment of guidance and counseling program in second institutions in Ghana. In 1982, another directive was issued from GES that started the desire of government to begin or introduce guidance and counseling program in our elementary schools as well. This time it covered first circle institutions in other than elementary schools, where the first one talk about. In 1990, the guidance and counseling unit of the Ghana Education Service started 1 week in-service training courses for schools and district-based guidance coordinators due to implementation of the new educational curriculum and the inception of the FQ program, Free Compulsory Universal Basic Education, where some people got opportunity to start school because if your parents were not actually rich enough, it was difficult to be able to go to school. But when the FQ program was actually introduced and the curriculum made provision for all school-going age to go to school, a lot of people got opportunity to school, and that has actually made some people to be what they are today. In October 2002, the President's Committee on Review of Education Reform in Ghana was actually formed under the chairmanship of the Vice Chancellor then of UW, Professor Jofos Anamwan Mensah. He was the chair of that committee, and he saw that there was a need, and he recommended that there should be guidance and counseling introduced in our Ghanaian schools, and he gave reasons why there was a need for formalized guidance and counseling in our Ghanaian schools. Remember, we are live on Radio Windy Bay 98.3 FM. We're also live on Facebook, and we are encouraging our students in level 300 who are doing EDC 351, in relation to guidance and counseling, to log in and listen. In few hours to come, the phone lines will be activated, and you will be given opportunity to phone in and then ask your questions. You can also send text messages and WhatsApp messages, and we are going to address all of them before we leave the studio. So students that I'm teaching, I've sent the flyers to you: chemistry department, physics department, biology, integrated science, as well as art education. I am encouraging you to tune in and listen, because the flyers have been shared with you, and I want to believe by this time you are with your device and listening, and you will be willing to contribute or ask questions for clarification. I want to go back again for the sake of those who didn't join at the initial start, so that we could actually be on the same page. We are saying that guidance and counseling started somewhere, and we need to trace how it started to where we are today. So we are saying that in terms of guidance and counsel, we can trace it to the ancient or early Greece communities and in Rome in the 20th century. And we are saying that these people that I've mentioned, from early Greeks and then the Asian and the Roman people, they believe in the philosophical teaching of Aristotle and Plato. And when we understand these are great philosophers that we're talking about philosophy, we cannot actually forget of their name, because they have made significant impact to the way philosophy has been from the beginning. Plato and Aristotle developed and expanded upon the ideas about the environment and its interaction that are related to the function of the people. So if you look at a theory we call environment fit theory in psychology, this theory says that as a human being in the environment, you can see that what you are endowed with, the environment also make provision for that. So if you see yourself to be having some kind of qualities or resources, or you are imbibed with some kind of idea, the environment has to make provision for you. Yours is to make the necessary move to be able to avail yourself, and the environment can cater for whatever your unique ideas will be, and you can gain employment and be satisfied with whatever work you are doing. Now the Greeks aim the Greeks aim that they wanted to train their youth, so this youth can acquire knowledge and skills to develop themselves and become more useful in the society where they were supposed to function. They also believe that humans as we are very unique and gifted differently, with different abilities, skills, and then ideas, and then interests. So in view of that, we were suited for different types of occupation, and each of us needed to discover what kind of work we could do, so that when we get employment, we could do it and do it better. They also believe that Romans did some kind of things that are remarkable even up to the times that we are seeing ourselves as people who are growing up, in the sense that they did the work of counseling and guidance through parental models, where parents serve as role models and resource people to their children, where they taught their children to learn by doing, to learn by observing or modeling. That is where Albert Bandura's theory of social learning takes effect from. So when you look at our context as Ghanaians, you realize that in those days, if your father was a craftsman, or your father was having some kind of work that he does for a living, you, the young one, anytime I thought he was going to do that, you were made to follow. Like those whose parents were fishermen, you are also supposed to follow your father to the sea. Then you learn how to fish, because your father will teach you how fishing is done. Now, if your father was a farmer, when he's going to farm, he will intentionally make a small hole for you. As you get to the farm, he will hand over the hole to you and tell you how to hold the hole and how to use it to farm or to weed. If your mother was a fishmonger, when she's going to smoke fish, she will actually ask you to follow, and she will teach you how fishmongering work is done. So, if your father was somebody who does any work at all as a source of living, then a child, you didn't need to learn this thing by going to school to learn it. Yours was to make yourself available whenever your father or your parents were going. Then you will learn to also do that by modeling what your parents were doing, by observing, practicing, and continuously listening, and then giving advices by your parents. You became perfect in that kind of job. So some people have gotten their career, their occupation through what was handed over to them by their parents, and that is what they are using to earn a living. So I think we need to applaud our parents for that initiative that they gave to us. Some of us, though we have been to school and we are educated and we are formally employed, we still rely on the kind of training our parents give us, the kind of work that they gave us to be doing the career, and that is even adding to our income as we go about with our daily life. Now, we are also saying that the early Greeks, the Asian, and then the Roman, they guided their young ones to know which kind of trade, occupation they were best suited for. So they didn't want them to make mistakes, and you get to an occupation or job, and you see that your interests and abilities are at variance with what the job requires you to do. So you needed to understand the requirements of that job before you enter into it, so that you can really be satisfied with whatever kinds of work you were doing. There is also an argument that some of the skills and then techniques used in modern day counseling and guidance coordinators could be traced back to the Catholic priest. The Catholic priest they were actually involved in confession of sins, which we call confessoria. They listened to the sins of their congregants, and they made sure that whatever discussion that was actually happening, nobody listened to the conversation, because confidentiality was practiced to its prime. So in view of that, modern guidance and counseling can also trace confidentiality back to the Catholic priest, where we operate on the principle of confidentiality, which is our hallmark. So we are able to keep secrets of people, and we are not supposed to make the issues known to any other third party. So we give credit to the Catholic Church and the Catholic priest for establishing confidentiality and the tenets of it, which we are using in modern day guidance and counseling. Remember, we are live on Radio Windy Bay 98.3 FM. We are also live on Facebook. This is level 300 course EDC 351 in relation to guidance and counseling education. Today we are privileged to be discussing on the topic historical movement of guidance and counseling, and want to find out how we can trace history from the Western world to the modern guidance and counseling that we are seeing today. So at the right time, the phone lines will be activated, and you'll be given opportunity to call, to send a WhatsApp message or SMS, and we are going to address all your concerns as we go on. So just listen and then begin to jot down whatever concerns you have. At the right time, we will listen to you and address all your concerns before we leave here. We want to look at development of guidance and counseling in the Western world. Guidance in the United States started in the 1890s, that is in the 19th century. It commenced in areas like New York, Boston, Detroit, and then Chicago. Now, these industries that we have mentioned, industrial towns that we have mentioned, they had industries that they were operating, and there was an industrial boom. Industrial boom means that there was public announcement where the industries needed people to employ. So when the public announcement was made, people from all over the world rushed to these industrial towns that we have mentioned. And because of the teeming population, the industry could not employ all of them, because those who went there, some were skilled, others were unskilled. And those who were not skilled and those who were skilled, they didn't want to come back, and the industry could not employ everybody. So you can imagine that if people are gathered like this, you can imagine how crime rate will be on the ascendancy. You can imagine the difficulties that they are going to experience. So first of all, let's look at the results of these particular shifts that people have to move from their countries to these four countries that we have mentioned. One was that there were a lot of unemployed people seeking jobs that the industries could not actually offer or could not employ. Low wages, because a lot were unskilled, to the extent that children were also put into labor. So there was child abuse, ladies were exploited sexually, and then the children were exploited because they were working under harsh conditions and anonymous, and they shouldn't have been employed in the first place. So low wages, because if there were so many people seeking employment and they could not employ everybody, they would give everybody part-time work, and your wages will not be what you were actually required to get. There was also overcrowding issue, because the accommodation became a problem, and housing was a difficult challenge for these people because of the great numbers. Facilities such as water, electricity were all overstretched because of the numbers. Now, crime rate was in the boom, as a lot of people from different backgrounds came there with different motives. Now, when this happened, it actually attracted the attention of some people who formed a movement called humanitarian movement, and they criticized the injustice that human beings were going through, the suffering that people were going through, especially in the industries. And they said no, human beings didn't need to go through such difficulties or challenges or suffering. So they used guidance to be able to help people gain the requisite skills and become more skillful. So as they became more skillful, the industry employed them, and that reduced the problem that was actually a source of work to the people in those countries. In 1885, George Meary started formal guidance in San Francisco. He established a school known as California School of Mechanical Arts. He did exploratory work with the trades that the students that he taught, and these students, he made sure that he collected information on various opportunities that existed for them to be able to know how counseling could help them to get job placement, and follow-up services were also made on these graduates to see how they were employed and how they were making progress in their respective job placements. So follow-up service is the one that is actually mandated by every counselor after you have been able to counsel your students and you have terminated. You have to make a follow-up on your clients to be sure that they are using the skills and the techniques and the resources that you equip them with to be able to cope and live as they leave you. We are also talking about another great person known as Frank Parsons. Frank Parsons was a social and political reformer, and he is known to be the father of vocational guidance. Frank Parsons formed the Vocational Bureau in Boston due to his work with the Civic Service House to provide vocational assistance to young people. Remember, we are live on Radio Windy Bay, EDC 351. Intro to Guidance and Counseling is what we're discussing today on the topic Historical Development of Guidance and Counseling Movement. And level 300 students, we are encouraging you to all tune in and listen at the right time. The phone lines will be activated. You'll be given the opportunity to send your messages, call, or also send SMS, and we'll listen to all of them and then address them before we leave. EDC 351 is a course for level 300 students, and we are encouraging those who are doing this semester to listen and take advantage, because that opportunity will not be given to us again. In 1908, the Boston Vocational Bureau helped outline a system of vocational guidance in the Boston public basic schools. The work of the Bureau influenced the need for and the use of vocational guidance both in the United States and other countries. By the 1918, there was documentation on the Bureau's influence as far as Uruguay and then China is concerned. So these two countries actually gave testimonies that the Bureaus actually influenced a lot of things, and they benefited so much from this particular information that was established by Frank Parsons. Guidance and counseling in these early years were considered to be mostly vocational in nature, but as the profession advances, other personal concerns became part of the school's counselor's agenda. In 1909, that's Frank Parsons, he published a book called Choosing a Vocation, or titled Choosing a Vocation. In his book, he's said to be the first person to coin the term vocational guidance, and we credit him with the title the father of vocational guidance. This marked the beginning of vocational guidance after he published the book. His effort and subsequent publications brought about the profession, guidance and counseling. Organized guidance and counseling emerged in the 1920s and 1930s. So that's been some long time ago. In Africa, we can say that guidance in Africa can be traced back to our traditional way of living, where we saw guidance in our marriages, we saw guidance in the work we did, we saw guidance in our morals, and we saw guidance in the way our family members advise and guide us through exhibited guidance and counseling. Now you realize that if you were growing up and you reach some stage, your parents will give you the guidance you need at that particular stage. For instance, as a girl growing up, when you reach the age of menstruating, the first menses you will see is known as menarche. And because you are not used to it, you may not know how to wear sanitary towels. So your mother was a resource person who will guide you how to wash sanitary towels, and will guide you how to be able to maintain personal hygiene, how to wash your clothing, and how to bath and keep yourself very neat. So all these ones, your mother served as a guidance coordinator to you, a guidance expert to you. If you needed to marry, your parents had in hand in the kind of woman and the kind of man you should marry, where their decision was paramount. Unlike these days where we move and we enter Texas and we see ladies and men with exchange contact, and the next day the person is in your room and that is your wife. Nobody knows where she's coming from. That is not the case. Another day when Winneba market is up, she will go with the same polythene bag she came with, to the market to do shopping, and she won't come back again. The way you got her, she will go the same way. But in those days, your parents needed to make some kind of inquiries about the kind of partner you are marrying, to be sure that the people had good family records. They don't have any history in terms of diseases or sicknesses, and they were people that society respected and revered so much, so that when you are marrying from them, it serves as dignity, it serves as respect that the two families were going to benefit from. So this is how they guided us in terms of how to be able to live and choose partners for ourselves. In terms of poverty rate, I realized that it was something that was cherished so much, and as a young growing individual or young boy or girl, you were asked to abstain from sex, because if you engage in that, you were not qualified to be initiated into the rite. So as you control and then try to manage your sexual desires, you realize that when you are initiated, you are given respect, and the husband or the woman you are going to marry will also give you that due respect again, because the person will see you to be somebody who has left a chaste life. So in those days, the way things were done, we can see that we are departing from that. That is where we are seeing young girls becoming pregnant because of the way they cannot abstain from sex. And premarital divorce is something that some of us are not married, but we are already divorced with our partners, because understanding is not there. You need to understand the person before you can move with the person. So in those days, once there was so much checks that were done, divorce was not so high as we are seeing today. In those days, if you wanted to get married, the marriage was not between you and the partner or the wife or the husband. It was between the two families, where they needed to actually get engaged in conversation, where if they agree and all the buy price are performed. In the day of the woman coming to the man's house, the woman will not be saying to you, the husband, straight. The woman will be saying to the most elderly person in the community or your place, and then the elderly man will get an old woman to take care of the newly couple who is coming to join the partner, to stay with the elderly woman, and the elderly woman will teach you how to handle your husband, how to cook, how to dress, and how to keep the house, and how to make sure that those in your house, everybody benefits from you. You don't actually have to segregate and say you are not my husband. Everybody is actually having a hand in your marriage, so that when there are issues, you know where to tackle it from. So when that day comes and they are sure that you have been given enough guidance, the elderly woman will bring you to your husband's house, and she will hand you over to your father-in-law, not your husband. So your father-in-law will then hand over you to your husband. So you realize that it was a procedure which actually marked the uniqueness of how our marriages were contracted. So that when there are issues, because your father-in-law is the one who gave you to your husband, you were having the right to go and report the issue to your father-in-law, who invite your husband, and you sit down and resolve your issue without sending your issues out. Unlike this modern way of our marriages, where your parents don't even know where your partner is coming from. So when there are issues, the woman, instead of telling the father-in-law or mother-in-law, they will go and tell their parents, and that is creating a lot of problems for us. So we are saying that in the Western world, things happen and our parents were serving as parental models. But in Africa, we are saying that this is how we could trace guidance and counseling, how it helped us in the olden days. So our parents actually were great moral to us, where we learn a lot of things from them. Now, in terms of Africa, we are saying that countries where formal guidance began, we could mention countries like Nigeria, Ghana, Tanzania, Zambia, Kenya, Egypt, Togo, Malawi, Botswana, and some few other countries. We intentionally left out a few other countries for you to also read and then add to your knowledge. So you realize that in Africa, if you are talking about where guidance and counseling first started from, Nigeria is the first country that comes to mind. And why are we saying so? We are saying so because in the year 1959, a group of Roman Catholic sisters organized career guidance for their final year students, and this started the official work of guidance and counseling in Nigeria. In terms of historical development of guidance and counseling in Ghana, guidance and counseling can be viewed from two broad perspectives. The first one is informal or indigenous or traditional guidance and counseling. The second one is formal or modern or organized guidance and counseling. And we are saying that in the initial guidance and counseling in Ghana, which was in the form of advice and guidance, we could trace it to a lot of our indigenous way of doing things. For instance, this could be seen in advice giving, poverty rise, in the proverbs, in the folk tales, the riddles, the puzzles, the taboos, the vocational education, marriage, and then parenting reinforcement. There were some taboos that we needed to all observe as people coming from one locality. For instance, in the farming community, you are told that on specific days like Friday, you don't go to farm. And they will tell that when you go to farm, you will see something that will actually frighten you. Like you are going to see a ghost when you go to farm. So on Fridays, don't go to farm. But it isn't that you are going to see a ghost. The scientific explanation is that when you keep farming every year, every day, when would the land be allowed to fallow? Which will mean that in as much as you are putting much effort and resources in your farming, you may not get the requisite yields that you want. In fishing communities, you are told that Tuesdays don't go fishing. If you go there, you will see Mami Water. It's not that you are going to see Mami Water. The reason is that when you keep farming or going fishing every day, when will the fish be allowed to multiply? So if you keep fishing every time, it means that it will come to a time that the fish will no more be there, to extinct, and how will you get fish again for your daily living? That is why you are told that in a week, don't go for fishing or farming in a particular day for very good scientific reasons. So some of us, we need to also observe these taboos because that is the way our society has been. You know, like proverbs, when in the, let me say, in the night, evenings like this, the elderly ones will sit down, and then normally in the farming communities, there will be granite for you to crack. So once they put the granite in a bowl or a saucepan and they put it in front of you, you sit around, and then the elderly ones will tell you stories. And normally they told us stories about Anansi and then the rabbit. And the end result is always that one will outwit the other, which were moral lessons that we learn a lot from. Now in the, let me say, in the dry season when the weather is very cold, in the evenings like this, you have to go and look for firewood. Then you are ready in the following morning at dawn. You have to get up early as a young person to come and set fire. Then you bring your yam, and then you are waiting for the elderly ones to come. When they come, they will tell you stories at the fireside, and these stories were things that actually made us to be aware of how our history has become. And we were aware that, look, there's no easy way to life. You must work, and you must make sure that you respect the elderly. We were told when we were growing up that when you meet another person, you must greet the person as a young person, and you have no locus to ask the person, how are you? But what do we see these days? We greet our students will greet you, and they will first ask you, how are you? People who are older than you in our society, we don't encourage that you ask them how. They can ask you how you are, but you cannot have the capacity to ask them how they are. And when you saw an elderly person carrying a load or need assistance, you didn't need to go anywhere. Go and approach the person and say, oh, may I help you? Then help the person carry whatever item the person is carrying. Then the person will say, thank you, God bless you. And those blessings were things that people benefited so much from. But these days, even in our university environment, you are going to have a lecture with students. You will be carrying a projector, carrying your laptop bag, you are carrying books, you are carrying extension board, and you are walking to classroom. Your students will bypass you. They will not even turn and look at you. When you get to the lecture hall, they are the ones seated in front of you looking at you. So such behavior, they are not actually entertained. Let's begin to go back to our culture where the elderly were respected and they were people that we revere so much. So that by so doing, the little things, blessings that they will give us by blessing us and praying for us, they will have a lot of benefit from us. So vocational education is where we learn from our parents, from the kind of jobs they do and the kind of craft work they did. If your father was a farmer, you will go farming with your father, and you wouldn't learn how to farm by going to school, but you will learn by observing, you will learn by modeling, you will learn by practicing, and you become perfect. So from Albert Bandura's social learning theory, we learn by observing, we learn by practicing and modeling. That's the only way our parents taught us how to also get career that we could use to earn a living. Most of us are educated and we are formally employed, but we still know the kind of craft work our fathers and parents handed over to us. So that's a secondary source of income to us, and that is helping us take care of our families. We are also saying that there was a time known as voluntary service era where people serve voluntarily without being asked for any payment or what will we take. They did it voluntarily in churches, in our mosques, in our homes, and in our schools. People volunteer. When we're growing up, we're not having trained teachers where your teacher will be a trained teacher or come to university and be a graduate. No, we were taught by people teachers. People teachers means that they were not employed, but they volunteered to teach us, and they were doing marvelously because they were committed to the job and they knew the work very well. Unlike this, the trained teachers even go to classroom and they're able to deliver on their promise. So the people teachers who actually taught us, we give credit to them because they really made us to understand things very well, and they were very committed. So we have learned some of these principles of being punctual, being committed and motivated from them. So we thank them for making us to understand that in life you just need to do your best and leave the rest for others to come and continue. So once they have trained us to become what we are today, it's our responsibility now to also nurture the next generation and usher them into a brighter and promising future than what we are seeing today. We are also saying that in the voluntary era, people serve as Sunday school teachers, people serve as secretaries. All teachers in those days were secretaries to their communities. When there's communal labor, nobody will come and tell you need to actually be part of it. And there were parents who provided some kind of services for us. The priests in those days, they were not married, but they were actually sponsoring us in our schooling, and they actually contributed so much to our development. Even now, the priests are not married, but some of us as students, they are the people taking care of our financial expenditure in our schooling, and they are the reasons why we are schooling and we have schooled to this level. We are also saying that they did this kind of work where we could consult them and they advise us as youth on moral issues. Moral issues, we are told that when something doesn't belong to you and you need it, ask permission. But this is what we see. You would take something that doesn't belong to you without even seeking the approval of the owner. That is not a good practice. They also assisted and advised the youth with their financial problems and how to resolve issues concerning financial management. But these days, our youth want to wake up one day and they are lying on money. So they will go every length of the country to make sure that if there's easier way to get money, they are part of it. And that is not something that they are happy at the end. So let's refrain from that and go back to our traditional way of doing things, where things were done in an orderly manner, and all the moral lessons that we actually learned were seen to be very helpful. The voluntary service era too, where people provided places and opportunity for the youth to socialize and then recreate. So once in a while, you come together to socialize, come together to share ideas. So there were family meetings almost at regular times, and you have to be part of it once we are coming from that family. By this time, when they call us, we tell them that we are busy and we cannot come. So we need to make conscious effort to be able to visit our families where there are gatherings so that we could also share ideas, and then the young ones will also benefit from us. Remember, we are live on Radio Windy Bay 98.3 FM. We are also live on Facebook. Today, we are talking about EDC 351, Introduction to Guidance and Counseling in Education, and the topic is Historical Development of Guidance and Counseling. So we have been able to establish that guidance and counseling didn't start in Ghana, it didn't start anywhere, but in some Western countries. And we are saying that our students in level 300, this is an opportunity for you to log in and listen, and then begin to get your notes ready. At the right time, the phone lines will be activated, and you begin opportunity to call, to send SMS messages and WhatsApp messages, and we'll read all of them and attend to them, and all your concerns will be addressed. So shortly, we will be giving the chance for you to let us know what your contributions are or your questions are. We'll address them before we leave the studio. So I want to continue by saying that in the voluntary service era, the youth were the ones who solved their problems. People assisted you to solve your problem, but this time around, we are shaking responsibility. When there are issues, we are blaming people. Blaming people is not part of the solution to your problem. You're only dodging problems. When the problems come, face them squarely and see in which way you can find ways of solving them by consulting the most experienced and knowledgeable people in society, and they will be of help to you to help you solve the problem. That makes you a responsible person. They also guided the youth to be able to understand that through Sunday school lessons and discussions that develop people morally and spiritually. So Sunday school, you couldn't go and sit in the church as a young person or a child. Sunday school was something that was compulsory when we were growing up. You need to go there, and then they would teach you before you come to join the main church. But these days, our children are not feeling well if they are in Sunday school. They don't want to separate from their parents. And we, the parents, must enforce that they should go to Sunday school because a lot of lessons are taught there and they are very useful. So when we go to churches and our children are with us and the Sunday school going on, let's encourage them and let them go, and then also learn the lessons that will help them develop morally and spiritually. Now, there were employment centers that were established across the country, and they had some kind of objectives to achieve. Want to walk through all the objectives that they were asked to do, and let's see how that will reflect in our modern way of doing things. First of all, the objectives were meant to introduce occupational literature into the schools through the Ministry of Education to enable people to be able to read about jobs and perhaps know which of them they were best suited for. Another objective that was part of their mandate was to develop lines of communication between various institutions and the employment service centers. The third objective was to provide officers with theoretical base in counseling and supervised practical experiences, so that whatever you were taking as a decision, you need to have theoretical foundation or where your decision is coming from. Don't just wake up and do things anyhow. Everything should be based on theory. The next objective is to improve contacts between the Ministry of Labor and the Ministry of Education, who together formed the Youth Employment Committee in Ghana in those days. Now, we are saying that attempts were made to officially establish guidance and counseling in Ghana, and want to see how the process began and where we are today. In the year 1955, the government made an attempt to organize national system of vocational guidance by establishing youth employment service centers for all youth under the age of 20 years who had middle school leaving certificate. So the youth, there was provision made for them to also get employed, and that was how to help them begin to live independent life. By 1961, there were 30 of those employment centers established across the country. In 1962, there was an establishment of the National Vocational Guidance System to make the education reflect the economic development of the country and the manpower needs of the country at that time. So, in any case, when there are reforms, it means that the current happenings will necessitate the kind of reform that should be done in our education sector to reflect that, so that we can get the requisite benefit from. In the 1968-69 academic year, a unit for guidance and counseling was created in the Curriculum Research Development Unit of the Ghana Education Service, alongside some other key offices or officers, where we had officers in charge of special education and welfare. So all these ones were created together with guidance and counseling in the 1968-69 academic year. In 1971, the cumulative record card was launched in elementary schools in some districts of 5 regions, and the regions are: we have the Eastern region, we have the Volta region, we have the Western region, Central region, and Greater Accra region. These are the 5 countries that officially they were the ones that were used for pilot study in launching cumulative record card in the year 1971. Now, the cards were also introduced into the learners of teacher training colleges in those days, and those who were under training were taught how to also use cumulative record card. So as a teacher, it was your duty to know how to fill the cumulative record card of your students, and all of us know very well that it was a very useful card where valuable information about us were kept. If you are moving from class 1 to class 2, it will follow you. If you are moving from GSSB to GSSA, it will follow you. So whichever school you move, even up to senior high school, community record card was seen to be very useful for us, where they enter your academic records, your family history, your educational history, everything about you. Community record card capture the relevant information, and people could tell who you were. We remember we are live on Radio Winnipeg. We are also live on Facebook. In short time, we are going to activate the phone line for you to call in and then tell us what your concerns are or contribute to the discussion, and we will attend to you before we leave the studio. So I want to continue by saying that in the year 1973, 6 Ghanaian experts were trained in the United Kingdom, United States of America, and then Canada. They had arrived in the country to contribute to the guidance and counseling field. But then there was a political instability where there was coup d'etat in the year 1972. So the condition was not favorable enough for them to be able to work. So they couldn't actually achieve what they wanted to do because of the coup d'etat that happened in the year 1972. In 1974, there was an adoption of the new structure and content of education in Ghana, where vocational, technical, and business courses were introduced into our curriculum. People got a chance to be able to read business courses, vocational courses, and technical courses at that time. In the year 1975, there were some teachers who were not below the rank of assistant superintendent. They were trained, and their training, they were asked to be welfare officers in our elementary schools, and they were given some tasks to perform. And their primary mandate was to help teachers, parents, and then children or people to resolve their problems that confronted them in the school setup. In the year 1976, the first directive was issued for the establishment of schools, guidance and counseling programs in secondary institutions in Ghana. That was in the year 1976. In the 1982, another directive from the GES started the desire for the government to begin or introduce guidance and counseling in our first secondary institutions, in other words, the elementary schools, which was the first issue that was done. Now, in the 1990, the guidance and counseling unit of the Ghana Education Service started 1 week in-service training courses for schools and district-based guidance coordinators due to the implementation of the new educational system and the inception of the free compulsory universal basic education FQ program. And this FQ program gave people the chance to all be in school if only you were a school-going age person. So it doesn't matter your financial background. Once you were eligible to be in school, you were automatically sent to school irrespective of how your financial background was. And that's where some of us got opportunity to be able to school. In October 2002, the president initiated that there should be a review on our education reform in Ghana, and Winnipeg UW was fortunate that the then Vice Chancellor, Professor Jofos Anamwa-Mensah, was the chair of that committee. So you see Joseph Anamwa-Mensah committee, and the committee saw the need and recommended that guidance and counseling should be introduced in Ghanaian schools. So when it started, UW was not doing guidance and counseling, it was UCC that was doing. So once this directive was made, we have to also capitalize on that to be able to start with how we were going to formalize guidance and counseling here, and it has developed to be a department as we are seeing today. So we want to end here and activate the phone lines for you to actually call and send your messages, and we will address them before we leave the studio. Thank you very much for listening, and we are waiting for your feedback.
Shine your eyes, come on, let's unite. From the north to the south and central, we are one. Oh, let's decide to pay that price. Yes, we aim providing higher education. Oh, just one name which belongs to me, that belongs to you. So let's join our hands and say to the world. the best institution where teachers are trained. Oh. We will shape that future, making you the teacher. So if you dream big. All of the department, the faculty, Spartans, Davians, Trojans, Pasto Unity. All of the affiliates of Simpa, Uni, got they agree. What be the name? You in the bill. What be the name, boy? You in the bill. What be the name? You in the bill. Oh yeah. We hear you. See your name. It's in our hearts, so we're ready, fighting from the start. We will shape that future, making you the teacher. So if you dream big, all of the courses we run it. LKU, you know, we got it, we own it, and we're proud of it. So in our heart, it's your name. What be the name? You in the bill. What be the name? University of Education, Winneba. Iconic initiative.
All right. And then maybe we'll give the studio the opportunity to be able to continue with other activities for the evening. So we are saying that in terms of EDC 351, into the guidance and counseling education today, we are talking about historical development of guidance and counseling. This is meant for level 300 students, and we want to say that maybe because of lectures and how things were done, some of us didn't listen from the beginning. I want to take some few minutes to wrap through what we have done, and opportunity will be given to us to be able to also know what we have learned for today. So we are saying that guidance and counseling can be traced to the early Greeks and ancient Greeks, and then Romans in the 20th century. And we are saying that they were with the philosophical teachings of Plato and Aristotle. And because they look at the environment and how the human being was related with the environment, they realized that the environment was capable of providing each of us the opportunity to be able to nurture our talents and become what we want to become. Now we are saying that the Greeks aim to train their young ones so that they could actually acquire knowledge and skills, and that could let them become more useful in their societies. They also believe that human beings were gifted differently, and as such were suited for different occupations. The Romans did it through parental models, where the parents serve as models and their children learn from them. So if your parents were doing some kind of work, it was something that would be a privilege for you to also learn from them. They guided their young ones to know which kind of trade or occupation they were best suited for. There is also an argument that some of the skills and techniques used in modern day counseling can be traced to the Roman Catholic Church, where the Catholic priests listen to confessions of sins, what we call confessoria. So confidentiality is deeply rooted in the Catholic Church, as well as the modern day guidance and counseling, which is our hallmark of operation. In terms of development of guidance and counseling in the Western world, we are saying that the first country that comes to mind is America. And in the 1890s, that's the 19th century, it commenced in industrial towns like New York, Boston, Detroit, and then Chicago. And there was an industrial boom, which is public announcement, where these four countries gave the opportunity that people should come and they will employ them in their industry. People rushed there and the industry could not employ each of them. So when they got there, they saw that the industry could not employ people who went there, both the skilled and unskilled were all there. People were not actually employed because they were unskilled. They also said they are not coming back to their countries again. So there were a lot of unemployed people seeking employment in those industries, but they couldn't get. The next thing, the wages were very low because a lot of unskilled people were there, involving children and then women, and some work were not meant for them. There was overcrowding also. Housing became a problem. Facilities were overstretched like water and then electricity. Crime rate was in the ascendancy because different people came from different backgrounds with different ideas and then motives. The condition led to the formation of what we call humanitarian movement, and they criticized the injustice that people were suffering from, and they saw that people were exploited. So they fought against this using guidance to be able to equip people with the requisite skills and knowledge so they become skillful, and that was going to let them get employment. In 1885, George Murray started formal guidance in San Francisco, where he established a school called California School of Mechanical Arts. He did exploratory work with the trades, and the students were taught. In this school, what he did was that he collected information on all occupations, and he made it available to students to read, and based on your reading, you could see the ones that you were best suited for. That is, counseling will help you place yourself where you should be. Then the young graduates who were employed, he made a follow-up on them to know how they were actually progressing in their respective employment centers. Frank Passion was seen as a social and political reformer. He was known to be the father of vocational guidance. Frank Passion formed the Vocational Bureau in Boston due to the exploratory work he did with the Civil Service House to provide assistance to young ones in terms of their vocational choices. In 1908, the Boston Vocational Bureau helped outline a system of vocational guidance in the Boston public schools. The work of the Bureau influenced the need for and then the use of vocational guidance in the United States of America and some other countries. In the year 1918, Frank Passion documented accounts of the Bureau and its influence, and countries such as China and Uruguay confirmed that the Bureau's work was really helpful. Guidance and counseling in these days were considered to be mostly vocational, but as time went on, there has been some kind of personal concerns which became part of the school counselor's agenda. In 1909, Frank Passion published a book titled Choosing a Vocation, and in his book, he is said to be the first person to have coined the term vocational guidance. So he is accredited as the father of vocational guidance. The publication of the book marked the beginning of formal guidance and counseling. His efforts and subsequent publications brought about the profession, guidance, and counseling. And we are saying that guidance and counseling work started or emerged in the 1920s and 1930s. In Africa, we can say that guidance and counseling can be seen in our traditional way of living, in aspects such as marriage, work, morals. Our parents actually taught us, and family members, the way they advised us and guided us, and all was exhibited in the work of what? Guidance. We are also saying that in countries in Africa, we can mention countries like Nigeria, Ghana, Tanzania, Zambia, Kenya, Egypt, Togo, Malawi, Botswana, and some few other countries. And we're saying that in Africa, the first country that comes to mind is Nigeria, where in the year 1959, Roman Catholic sisters organized vocational career guidance for their final year students. Now, historical development of guidance and counseling can be seen from two broad perspectives. We have the indigenous or the informal or the traditional guidance and counseling. Then we have the formal, modern, or organized guidance and counseling. In the aspect of the initial guidance and counseling in Ghana, it could be seen the advices that people gave us and the way we practice our way of doing things. For instance, in poverty rise, in proverbs, telling, folk tales, riddles, and then puzzles, taboos, vocational education, marriage, all these were forms of guidance given to us by our parents. Now, there was an era known as voluntary service era where people volunteer and help. In this kind of help, people saw themselves working in the home, in the churches and schools for free. These kind of things help us by making sure that we could consult people who could advise us as youth on moral issues. The voluntary service era also assisted the youth with their financial problems and how they could resolve them. They provided opportunities and places for us to meet and socialize, and then also begin to network with other people. It also assisted the youth to be able to solve their personal problems. It guided the youth also in Sunday schools where moral lessons were taught, and that helped people to be able to develop morally and spiritually. There were some employment centers that were established across the country, and there were some mandate that they were supposed to achieve at the end. The first objective was that to introduce occupational literature into the schools, where through the Ministry of Education, so that people could read and see what kind of jobs that they were best suited for. The next one, to develop lines of communication between various ministries and the employment service centers. The third one was to enable them to be able to provide officers with a theoretical base in counseling and supervise practical experiences. Then the other one, to improve contacts between the Ministry of Labor and the Ministry of Education, who together formed the Youth Employment Committee in Ghana. In the year 1955, there was an attempt by the government to organize a national system of vocational guidance by establishing youth employment centers, and it was meant for youth under the age of 20 years who had completed middle school leaving and they were not actually employed. By 1961, 30 of these centers were established across our country. In 1962, there was an establishment of national vocational guidance system to make the education system reflect the economic needs of the country and the manpower needs of the country, where people were trained in the aspect that the country needed the resources more. In the 1968-69 academic year, a unit for guidance and counseling was created in the curriculum research development unit of the Ghana Education Service, alongside some key positions of key offices where we can see it to be working today. Special education was a portfolio, and that of welfare officers was another portfolio created for people to be able to fill. In 1971, cumulative record card was launched in Ghana in some districts in 5 selected regions, and it was done on a pilot basis, and the regions were Central Region, Western Region, Eastern Region, Volta Region, and Greater Accra Region. So it was introduced in training colleges at that time, so that the trainees were taught how to fill and use a cumulative record card. In the year 1973, 6 Ghanaian experts arrived in the country, where they were trained in USA, Canada, and then United Kingdom. They came to contribute to the guidance and counseling field. However, there was a coup d'etat in 1972, and the country was not very stable, and that did not allow them to be able to do their work as expected. In the year 1974, there was an adoption of the new structure and content of education in Ghana, where vocational, technical, and business programs or courses were added to our school curriculum. In 1975, some teachers who were not below the rank of assistant superintendent were trained to serve as welfare officers in our elementary schools, and their mandate was to make sure that the people who are the learners and parents and teachers are able to resolve their issues in the school. In the 1976, the first directive was issued by the government to establish guidance and counseling programs in second circle institutions in our country. And in 1982, another directive was issued by GES, where there was a desire to introduce guidance and counseling program in first circle institutions, including elementary schools as well. Then 1990, we are seeing that a unit of the guidance and counseling in education service was actually doing something. They started with 1 week in-service training courses for schools and district-based guidance coordinators due to implementation of the new education system and the inception of the FQ program, which is a free compulsory universal basic education, where all children of school-going age were supposed to be in school. In October 2002, the President's Committee on Review of Education Reforms in Ghana, under the chairmanship of Professor Jofos Anamwa Mensah, the then Vice Chancellor of UEW, was tasked to make sure that education reflected the needs of the country, and guidance and counseling was seen as one of the routes that could help us achieve our desired goals in school. So based on that, UEW was actually not noted for guidance and counseling, but it was UCC. So that has given us the platform to be able to have guidance and counseling formally introduced, and we are now having it as a whole department. So this is how far we have come, and want to thank our listeners for active listening, and all the best for the rest of the day. Thank you very much.
Iconic initiate.